This is Superior Sports Talk with Reggie Wilson and Luke Inman, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota, and it starts now.
Back in the lab, Reggie and Luke, back at it. Another episode of Superior Sports Talk, presented by Locked On Sports Minnesota. What's happening, Reggie?
What's happening? Another fun weekend. All these game sevens, man. It was a lot of fun on the sports dial.
Yeah, I mean, this weekend seemed a lot quieter in Minnesota sports after investing so much time into the Wolves and Wild playoff runs this past month, but still plenty to break down. We're going to talk Twins, talk some NBA playoffs, as you mentioned. Plus, later I'm putting Reggie on the hot seat with What Does It Mean? It's all coming up on Superior Sports Talk. But first, if you enjoy Superior Sports Talk, you'll also enjoy our daily show with former NFL receiver Ron Johnson. Ron offers the unique view of an athlete turned broadcaster and brings you high-profile guests like Braylon Edwards, Adam Thielen, and Robert Smith. Subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel or your favorite podcast feeds so you never miss an episode. All right, Reggie, let's talk some of those Minnesota Twins, shall we? After getting throttled by the Astros early last week, it felt like the Twins kind of failed their first real litmus test of the season. However, they bounced back against the Guardians and win 2 of 3, putting up 17 runs in the series, and flashed their bats back again after a cold stretch. Gio Urshela stood out with a great series, hitting 2 home runs, making a handful of great plays defensively at third base as well. In the month of May, Jorge Polanco ranks 3rd in the AL in OPS, having a great month thus far. And Royce Lewis hit his first home run of his major league career this weekend, and wouldn't you know it, it was a grand slam Friday.
Grand salami.
Helping the Twins blow past the Guardians 12-8 Friday night. Reggie, let's get into the Twins in a broader lens here in a second. But first, just your thoughts or notes from the series win over the Guardians over the weekend. Anything stick out for you over these last 3 games since we last spoke?
You know, they did what they had to do. That was a big series win against the Guardians because the Guardians have seemed to be a team that, you know, is surging. And you really didn't think that maybe they would, you know, like you thought maybe this might be a little bit of a down year for them. But then, you know, coming into the series, Josh Naylor, he was on fire. He got COVID, so they didn't really have to deal with him. So that was a plus for their pursuits, but it seemed like they had the firepower to match the Guardians if Naylor was to play. And so I think what we saw was the Twins got back to doing what we saw them doing when they were going on those long win streaks earlier in the month. I think they were hitting, they had the pitching that was complimentary, and they put it all together. And so, you know, we talked about it on Friday after getting, you know, just like whipped, you know what I mean, from the Astros. It was just like, look, when they come back out and they play these series, I don't think we knew what to expect from them, but I think it's encouraging to see that they were able to go out, win 2 of 3 from the Guardians and really kind of get back on track as they head to this series they're about to go play the A's. Like they couldn't ask for a better like part of the schedule after, you know, kind of getting shellacked a little bit from Houston. Now you're coming back and you're playing the Guardians and you take 2 or 3 for them, and then you're playing the Athletics, who might as well be like a minor league baseball team at this point because they're just getting beat up on like if they were a boxer, they're getting knocked out of the ring. You know what I mean? Like, that's what they're going through right now. And so I think the Twins are in a really good spot, and they did what they had to do, and it was encouraging to see that.
Yeah, Guardians got hit by the COVID bug, some injuries. You talked about Naylor specifically, and I think we got to this point in the schedule, this soft spot, and everybody just kind of wrote off the Guardians like they're nobodies, but they're a talented ball club as well, and who knows, once we get into the thick of the summer, they could certainly be contending in this division with the Twins, no doubt. The Twins are now 20-15, first place in the Central, and the return of Carlos Correa seems more and more imminent by the day. Getting him back in the lineup should only improve the Twins' bats that were ice cold last week, like we mentioned. Reggie, they've got another another 3-game series with the A's coming up, who they swept last weekend. You just mentioned that. Then a nice little soft stretch. Kansas City, Detroit, Kansas City, Detroit. When you look at this next 20 games or so, what are you hoping to see from the Twins as they try to take advantage of their schedule before they square off with some big hitters, the Yankees, Blue Jays shortly thereafter, tinker with the lineup, anything of that nature during this little stretch here?
I think best case scenario is they win at least 14 or 15 of those 20. I think it's interesting because the Twins have a little bit of a conundrum here. You know, they are trying to figure out this whole deal with, Byron Buxton, which I know we'll get into a little bit. And then they got these like guys that are really doing well. Carlos Correa, they signed him because they felt like they needed another veteran bat, another championship level bat. Then you got his replacement, Royce Lewis, hitting a grand slam on Friday. You got Miranda. You got Celestino. Like, you got these guys that are filling in quite nicely. I think this will be a good chance to kind of get them some reps, get them some time in these games, and get them just more comfortable because you could be needing these guys down the stretch. Miranda, like all these guys are playing, and it's a luxury to be able to just like shift them to St. Paul and then bring them back whenever you need to. And I think what you want to see is them to continue to do what they did against like the Guardians. Maybe take 2 of 3 in each of those series that are coming up. I think they are good enough to do that, good enough to sweep some of these teams. And so, it's still professional baseball. You have to respect the opponent, and you have to, you still got to go up there and win these games. But, I think it's encouraging. Joe Ryan bounced back. You got Sonny Gray. His stuff looked nasty the last time he started. I think it's encouraging that they're playing the type of baseball that they've played after this weekend series. And so I think what you want to see is to continue to find guys. If you're going to continue to tinker with the lineup, if you're going to continue to have, load management or whatever with Byron Buxton, I think you kind of found a little bit of these recipes that can get you to success with this baseball team. And I'm excited to see how they kind of tinker and how they, really work this thing over these next 20 games or so.
Yeah, first and foremost, I think you just want to see this team get healthy and see what your best 9 guys in the lineup can do for a consistent stretch. And I think then you can really finally start to get a feel for what this team's capable of when you've got that mix of studs like Buxton and Correa mixed in with a lot of younger high-end talent like Royce Lewis and company, as you mentioned. But, man, they've certainly been plagued by a little injury bug here or there early on, and getting healthy has to be priority A, first and foremost, no doubt. You mentioned it. Obviously, you love the excitement of bringing in a high-prize free agent like Carlos Correa, but we all knew when you spend the number 1 overall pick on a kid like Royce Lewis, you're going to have to find a way, somehow, some way, to get him into the lineup and get those valuable reps. You just can't put a price on these reps. These young players are starting to see some valuable playing time. So it's a great problem to have, no doubt, by Rocco Baldelli, but he's got to find a way right here in these next 18, 20 games to tinker with that lineup, kind of, trial and error a little bit before things get really tough. And again, you got the Yankees, Blue Jays, Red Sox. It's a tough stretch coming up after these 18, 20 games. Use this stretch to your advantage for sure and find the best 9 guys. What order that may be, I don't know, but give you your best chance of winning when things get tough in the thick of the summer. Twins start that 3-game series with the A's tonight. Chris Archer on the mound in Oakland, so late start to that one. First pitch, I don't think till like 8:40.
8:40.
Man.
Yeah. Goodness.
Late
Archer's
start.
still looking for his first win, too. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. You mentioned Archer. You mentioned Sonny Gray throwing some smoke. Joe Ryan's the stud. Now that we're, 30-plus games in, about 6 weeks into the MLB season, a lot of talk going into the year was going to be around that starting rotation. Now that you've seen these guys for 6 weeks or so, everybody's got 3-4 starts under their belt. I'm just curious, who do you think is like their top three guys? I mean, Joe Ryan's the easy number one, but after that, there's a grab bag, a mixed bag of different options. Who right now, let's just say the playoffs started tomorrow, who's your 1, 2, and 3 from this Twins rotation after what we've seen so far?
Well, I think 2 unquestioned is Sonny Gray, if he's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Three, that's a tough one, man.
You'd think it would be Paddock, right? But obviously he's on the 60.
Yeah, Paddock. I don't think Paddock's going to be available. So yeah, he would be the obvious choice. But okay, you talk about Archer, you got Bundy, you got Winder.
It's tough, man.
I think if you're gonna go your third, it would be between Archer and Bundy.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
And look, Archer's last start was not good, and so, but a couple of Bundy's last few starts have not been good as well. So I think it's a toss-up. I think whoever you trust more. But if you had to pin me to a board and make me choose, maybe Bundy.
Yeah. Archer got shelled most recently, but that was against the Astros. Bundy's been pretty up and down consistently the last few starts. But, I mean, flip a coin right now. And, again, that's why you use this 18, 20-game stretch, the soft point in the schedule, to figure those things out. Again, maybe a good problem to have some good depth, even after losing guys like Maeda and Paddock. Those are huge blows for any other team. To still have guys like Archer and Bundy to throw out there on nights 3 and 4 in a series is really nice to have that kind of luxury at this point.
And you mentioned Kenta. He hopes to be back this season. So it's like,
is that right?
Okay. If they do what they need to do and get into the post, what type of luxury would that be to go into the postseason?
Yeah,
you lose Paddock, but then be able to have Kenta Maeda help you in the postseason, or kind of get maybe a few starts in at the end of the regular season and maybe come back in the postseason. Like, that's a luxury. And when you say, who's the top 3, he's going to be in that top 3 for me.
Rest assured, again, Reggie and I will be here tomorrow to break down that game 1 of this nice little soft schedule here coming up for the Twins' next 18, 20 games. Coming up, we're talking game 7s in NBA playoffs from the weekend. Plus, later, I'm putting Reggie through the gauntlet with what does it mean. But first, do you want instant post-game reaction from insiders that cover your favorite teams? Check out our Locked On Sports Minnesota podcasts on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Following every Twins, Vikings, Wild, or Wolves game, our Locked On team hosts are broadcasting live with team insiders like Kevin Gorg for the Wild and Brandon Warren for the Twins. Never miss a podcast by subscribing to the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel. There was 7 game 7s that took place this weekend between the NHL and NBA playoffs. And we got to see a ton of just great action, just great sports taking place. But let's start in Phoenix, where there was no bigger shocker than the Mavs putting in work against the Suns, going into halftime, 30-point lead. In fact, at the midway point, it was literally the Suns 27, Luka 27, single-handedly. Luka took over, and I think for me, had to have supplanted himself as the number 1 top dog left in the playoffs remaining. Better than Steph right now, better than Jimmy. Mavs cruise 123-90, stunned the Suns home crowd. Luka puts up 35 and 10. They got up early, Reggie, and the Suns just had absolutely no answer in this one. Devin Booker, Chris Paul, both held in check. Props to head coach Jason Kidd. I thought he did a great job drawing up a great game plan to limit both of them. Reggie, big shocker for sure to see this one play out the way it did, especially when we're used to seeing such, dramatic, close, down-to-the-wire finishes in Game 7 matchups.
And Phoenix was your team, man.
You got to say that? Don't remember.
They were your team. But you know what? They were the team that I thought was going to do it too. I mean, if you look at it, they were 64 wins, the number 1 seed in the West. Like,
got up 2-0 in the series.
Yeah.
Let's go chalk. Let's go 4-1 and get out of here. Yeah.
I really don't know what happened, honestly. Like, and then you come out in a game 7 with that type of effort. Man. I hate to bring this up. But when we saw the Wild come out in their game 6, and you're like, look, you guys have your backs against the wall, and they just don't show up. Like, this is kind of similar, it's game 7. Like, there should be no extra motivation needed, no amount of pep talks, if you don't realize the moment of a game 7, like, there's something wrong. And you're talking about a team that was in the flipping finals last year. Man. And you come out against Dallas, and honestly, Dallas kind of seemed like they were playing with house money. Like, they seemed like they had nothing to lose. Luka came out and hit his first 2 shots, and they weren't necessarily easy shots either. He was just like, oh, okay, this might be one of those nights. But, like, you would expect Booker to come back down and give it to him, and they were missing shots. They were taking bad shots. Now, coming out talking about maybe possible chemistry issues. Maybe Chris Paul was nursing an injury at 37 years old. He's talking about, we're coming back. We're expected to come right back and be back here next year and all that. It's just like, man, look, nothing is promised in sports. Nothing is promised in the NBA. Like, you guys squandered an opportunity. I think maybe they got a little too full of themselves. They start smelling themselves a little bit too much, like, it wasn't that long ago when you guys were in the dumpster of the league. So, like, don't act like you've been there before so many times, because you haven't. You guys really have just arrived. The bubble was a good, time for them. And then after the bubble, they've been a really good basketball team. But we're only talking about, the last 3 seasons?
Right.
And so I think what is tough is you go up. They struggled a little bit against New Orleans in the last series, but got it done. And then you go up 2 games in this series, and maybe you think it's just, it's all gravy. But Jason Kidd's just like, look, I made some mistakes in my past coaching stops, but I've learned. I've won a championship with the Lakers. Like, I'm here. Like, I know what I'm doing at this point. What a masterclass of a coaching job Jason Kidd did. He's a Hall of Famer for a reason. Maybe not as a coach, but as a player, he knows what, as a point guard, he knows how to figure some things out. And he figured some things out. And the Mavs played as good of basketball as you can expect from them over the last several games of the series, and they deserved it. They deserved to win. It was just an all-out shellacking, and it was just kind of off-putting. It was just like really jarring to see that effort in a Game 7 from Phoenix.
On Friday, we were talking about the Vikings and how important coaching is. I mean, in all of sports over the last 5-10 years, certainly you mentioned a master class by Jason Kidd, just an X factor, a wild card. You don't think about, we always analyze all the players, the X's and O's, the matchup on the court, but Jason Kidd, man, he outcoached the Phoenix Suns there, and certainly the best team. You always want the best team to win. The best team won last night. Suns' second straight year losing a series. They were up 2-0 in, and now they're just the second team ever to win 64 regular season games, most in the NBA, and not make it to the chip. The only other team was actually, in fact, the Dallas Mavericks in 2007. You asked, I don't know what happened to the Phoenix Suns. I'm not sure it was so much the Phoenix Suns, more so it was Luka. I think the Luka effect right now, man. I mean, he is playing on another level. He's just overwhelmingly the best player in the NBA playoffs right now, and it's going to be a lot of fun to see him match up against the Warriors with Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and a healthy Klay Thompson finally.
Yes.
We'll get into that during this week for sure. They square up Wednesday versus the Golden State Warriors. Going to be just a great series. The other Game 7 that took place in Boston, where the Celtics had their backs up against the wall, they were down 3-2 in the series. They go on to win 2 in a row, beat Giannis and the Bucks 109-81, thanks to an NBA record-setting 22 three-pointers. Grant Williams scored a career-high 27 points. Jason Tatum adds 23 of his own. They outscored the Bucks 61-38 in the second half, Reggie. The Celtics are the hottest team in the NBA. Remember, they were sitting in ninth place in the Eastern Conference back on February 1st.
Wow.
What do you like from the Celtics last night in the series, how they came back? And I guess, how scared should the Miami Heat be playing a team with just so much momentum right now?
Hey, they should be really scared. I think playoff Jimmy is a different dude,
Yeah.
and the Heat play like a team who's been there before. You know, it's funny you talk about the Suns. I feel like the Heat are kind of like the anti-Suns. And they have a coach with championship pedigree. He coached LeBron and D Wade, and he's won several rings as a head coach. And Eric Spoelstra, I think he's one of the best head coaches in the NBA. And it's gonna be tough. I could see that next series going 7 as well. Boston is playing good right now, and what a job from Coach Udoka. Really just like locking in. I think he made a comment like, they were saying how, they went down, the Celtics went down and all that. And he was just like, yeah, it's going to make for a great comeback when we win this series. And they went and did it. And I think, you're talking about Luka being like the best guy in the playoffs right now. I think you have to put Jason Tatum right up there with him. And if Luka's 1A, Jason's 1B. And I just think he is like turning into a legitimate bona fide superstar in front of our very eyes. I think he's been a star, but like the dude just kind of seems to have just like no conscience out there. He's just out there like balling. And the compliment of Jaylen Brown, like this team is dangerous. And if Al Horford is going to play like he's playing this last series, like turning back the hands of time, and dominating like that, like I think the Celtics have what it takes to get it done, but that Heat team is solid top to bottom, and they got a lot of depth as well. And so I think that has the makings of a signature classic of a series that probably goes 7 as well.
You brought it up, so I'll own it. At the beginning of the playoffs, we had our predictions. I went chalk in the West with the Suns. And if you remember, I picked the Nets as my finals team right here on this show. And my reasoning was, well, if they can beat the Celtics, they'll just have so much confidence and momentum. They'll be able to beat anybody. Well, the Celtics win that. They beat KD, and then they go beat Giannis and the Bucks. And now they're the team no one should want to face with all the momentum on their side. Number 1 defense in the league. Miami Heat have a top 5 defense as well, but their scoring from time to time leaves you wanting a little more, especially that half-court offense can sputter a little bit at times. So that's just going to be a great series again. They'll square off with the Heat in Game 1 Thursday night. Let's hit the reset button. Quick NBA Finals predictions now, Reggie. Final 4 teams left. Who do you like?
I'll go Warriors just because, they've been there before. And
it's tough. I don't know what I would love to. I should have pulled up the Vegas odds. I mean, I'm assuming the Miami Heat are favored just by a hair.
I mean, they've been there. They were the bubble finals team. But you know what? The Celtics are playing so good right now. I'm going to go Warriors. I'm going to go Celtics. Finals.
I like that. I got to take the Celtics again because of the same reason I had the Nets. I think they've just beaten so much great talent, KD, Giannis. Now I think they feel like they can beat anybody, man. They're playing with house money, more or less. Nothing to lose. Miami Heat have all the pressure in the West, so I'm going with the number 1 player in the league and the coaching with Jason Kidd paired up. Luka, Jason Kidd. It'd be a huge upset, man, but I think they could do it. Mavs, Celtics. That's my prediction. Man,
also, I will say too, how about Giannis, man? Like that was an incredible postseason performance from him. He left it all out there. He gave it his very all. And nothing but respect to him, nothing but respect to the Bucks. Like they had that championship pedigree, going up 3-2 and putting themselves in position to win that series without Chris Middleton. But then you saw in that Game 7, like they needed Chris. Like Giannis tried to do as much as he could, but like he needed his Robin. And Middleton being hurt, you hate injuries, man, because you would love to have seen these two teams duke it out at full strength. And what ended up happening is just the Celtics had much more firepower when it came down to it in Game 7 than the Bucks did. But I am sure that we're going to see the Bucks back in that same position next year. challenging for another championship because like they have it and Giannis has arrived. Like no question about it. He's arrived. He's one of the best players on the planet, if not the best player on the planet. He's got it all together. And I think, it was tough to see that injuries kind of derailed what could have been another like repeat type championship performance from them. But I think we'll see him again next year.
So often you get to the playoffs, these teams have to just scratch and claw and just battle night in and night out during the end of the regular season to get into the playoffs, that injuries end up playing such a huge factor in all of sports in come playoff time. And that's why the teams with the best depth and best coaching, like we talked about, ends up finding a way to kind of sneak their way through and get towards the end, whether it's conference championship or the actual finals. Certainly would have been great to see the Bucks and Giannis again with the full roster. You wish it was Madden. You could just turn off the injuries for a little bit during the playoffs, but it just doesn't work like that. All right. The time has come. My favorite segment is here. I'm putting Reggie on the hot seat, covering all the latest hot topics in Minnesota sports, called What Does It Mean? Reggie, are you ready?
Let's do it.
So first up, the Minnesota Twins came out recently and stated the new goal and plan moving forward for Byron Buxton is to have him healthy for, quote, 100 games or so.
All right.
Saying if they can keep him healthy and fresh, he can be one of the best players in the entire Major League Baseball. What does it mean for Buxton and the Twins front office next offseason when trying to come to a long-term extension, knowing you're paying top dollar for a guy that's playing less than 2/3 of the schedule play at best? And just side note, what does it mean for the fans' frustration saying, wait a minute, your plan is to really just lower the bar for Buxton? A lot of different topics swirling around Byron Buxton and the Twins' latest game plan to kind of slow him down a little bit.
It's load management. It's like Kawhi Leonard, Tim Duncan, the Spurs and Greg Popovich, you sit them in the second of a back-to-back. You sit them. It's all about preservation with Buck, because like you see that sometimes he just can't help himself. Did you see that play yesterday when he was trying to make a play in the outfield and he goes like leg first into and it was just like like you're clutching your pearls because you're just like, oh my gosh, like did he just hurt himself? And luckily like he was okay and he was able to just stay in the game and he hit a home run and all that and like it was great. But like the dude is just a walking hazard sometimes. And so I think what the Twins are doing is trying to protect him from himself. Before the season started, they signed him to a 7-year, $100 million deal. Okay? Like, they want to see him out there. And if he's going to do, the first time he got hurt this season, he was doing a routine thing, sliding into second base, and he hurt himself. Like, it's just weird with him in that regard. But you want to see him out there. And I think fans should temper themselves because I know like he's an electric player. When he's out there, he's producing at a high level and you want to see him as much as possible. But what I think you've seen is that him playing often means that he's going to be dealing with some nagging injuries. He's going to be dealing with some injuries that may cost him some games. And I think if they're going to just have him on load management, there are 162 games in the season. If you're saying that he's going to play 100 and then, you guys are in playoff contention and you guys have him for the playoff stretch, I think you take that 10 times out of 10. So I think they have shown that they have a little bit of the depth to be able to rest him, every so often and still be able to win these games like they should. They got, Gary Sanchez. I think his bat is maybe starting to wake up a little bit. You got, Carlos Correa going to be coming back, and he's expected to be a key force for that lineup. And so I think you have the weaponry to be able to overcome those few games that you do not have Buck. But then when he's out there, you're seeing he's producing like you haven't seen before. And so I think that's fine with me. I'm good with the load management as long as it preserves him throughout the whole season.
Buxton's only played 100 or more games in one of his 8 seasons. And even
Exactly.
the last 5 seasons, the most he's ever played in the last 5 seasons is 87 games. So no question, the Twins are such a better team with him than without. In fact, this year they're 15-8 when he plays. They're 5-7 when he doesn't. The percentage since 2017, they win 59% of their games with him in the lineup. Nearly a 600% winning percentage. Unbelievable. 46% when he's not in the lineup. But clearly, something needed to change. A new approach needed to take place with the Twins training staff, the front office, the coaching, everybody, and say, all right, it's been too long. It's been too much.
Yeah.
We got to change the game plan and mindset about who and what this guy is.
And what's interesting, too, is, you know, he signed the 7-year, $100 million deal before the season. But, like, that's a bargain considering the production that this guy has. Like, they got him for a bargain. If he's healthy, like he's pushing well over 250. Like
Not a question. Yeah.
He's a $200+ million player if he's healthy. And they know that. And so like they're kind of getting him for a bargain, but it's just kind of like, look, you're being paid for your service. And so that's the thing. And so look, if you got to preserve them, but that helps keep them out there. And that's what I think continues to electrify fans.
I don't know if you saw this one. The Cincinnati Reds
pitch
a no-hitter. They don't allow one hit and find a way to lose 1-0 to the Pirates. The Pirates scored their one and only run after 3 walks in the 8th and scoring on a ground out. And there's your ball game. What does it mean when analyzing this loss to some of the worst losses in MLB history? And now it's becoming a lost season for the Reds.
So, you know, I used to cover the Reds the last 4 years, and I was there for probably some of the best seasons that they've had in a while. It was just a couple seasons, but what's interesting is they have kind of put their season into the tank. And what is tough is, you know, they have elevated Hunter Green to the starting rotation. And what's tough for a young player like that is you're going up and you're taking your lumps. And what you've seen, I think it was 118 pitches through 7 1/3. And they asked him after, I'm going to pull it up, people are saying, you know, Hunter Green is going to be great. Embarrassing, sure. This is from The Athletic. Embarrassing, sure. But after the Chuckles pass, Hunter Green's dominance is what really matters in the Reds' no-hit loss. Hunter Green no-hit the Pirates in his time in the game yesterday. And that was exciting. I mean, that let the Reds know that your future is bright. But what you don't want to do is squander a talent like this. And he's pitching these games like this to no win. Like, you pitch good enough like that, you should have a win under your belt. And he doesn't. And I think the Reds are doing him a disservice. I think they're trying to help themselves, you know, when they put him out there, you know, to try to win, but they're not. I mean, that's pretty embarrassing when you talk about a 1-0 loss and you don't even allow a hit for the other team. Like, you can't get this guy not a 1 run, like not any run support after he goes out and does that for you. And he was gassed. He was tired. I mean, he gave it all that he had. This guy had Tommy John surgery. He throws over 100 miles an hour. Like, and you're not even able to get him a run on the board like that against the Pirates.
Yeah,
like against the Pirates. Like, are you? What is going on? Like, it's crazy because like the Reds have picked it up a little bit over the last few weeks. They haven't been as terrible, and that's been kind of encouraging from a Cincinnati fan standpoint. But no more demoralizing than something like that, and no more evident than the state of the franchise at this point that something like that happens.
Stats sometimes lie. They don't always tell the whole story for sure. But, I mean, these guys make their living off their wins and losses, their ERA,
Yeah.
their WHIP, right? And when he goes and tries to sign that big monster contract, and you're looking at it and say, well, I mean, he didn't have a ton of wins. That's not my fault, man. That's unfair for how
That's like
well
Jacob
he's
deGrom
performing.
with the Mets.
Yes, exactly. Yep. It's just not fair, and you're doing him a huge disservice when it comes time again for him to get paid, which he should. 162 games are played. If you can pull out one game and just show a synopsis of the Red season, you got to pull out this game and say, this is basically all you need to know is our season, basically in a nutshell, came down to games like these. You lose 1-0 and don't allow a hit. Unbelievable. Last one. What does it mean with Reggie? With the draft now concluded, ESPN's latest insider article breaks down every NFL team's biggest roster weakness still remaining. For the Vikings, Derek Clausen highlighted the tight end position being the team's biggest soft spot, with Irv Smith Jr.'s injury concerns and lack of depth behind him. What does it mean for the amount of pressure now on Irv Smith after failing to address the position early in the draft, and just how much trouble is the offense in if and when Smith loses significant time again with another injury?
So you look at where Kevin O'Connell came from, and he had Tyler Higbee, and they pretty much use the tight ends pretty productively with the Rams, and so I think what is cool for Irv Smith is if he can stay healthy, like he should have a pretty big year. Where they don't have that luxury anymore is if Irv Smith goes down, they don't have a guy like Tyler Conklin to be able to go out there and produce at a similar level. Like Tyler Conklin was a luxury last year. They don't have him anymore. I'm looking at their depth, and you're looking at guys like Ben Ellefson, who really hasn't played. They signed Johnny Munt, who, came over from the Rams, but I think he's more so like a blocking tight end. Last year he had 1 reception for 9 yards. I don't know if you're counting on anyone outside of Irv Smith, because like all the other guys are largely unproven. What I think you're going to see is a lot of multiple receiver sets and, spreading it out to those guys. And maybe you don't have, multiple tight end sets, and maybe you kind of, make up for the lack of tight end depth, with that. But what I will pose, there's a guy who's just been kind of hanging out at different sporting events. Just been kind of seeing him around.
You're not. Oh,
here or
are
there.
You saying what I think you're saying?
And his name is Kyle Rudolph.
Ooh.
And he's available. And he knows Minnesota. He knows the Vikings. And he's still a productive player. And so I think that if they can't do anything with Irv as far as like getting depth behind him, there's a guy who maybe you can try to come to some sort of deal with, maybe during training camp or something like that, to get him into the fold. And I think he will be open to that. And so maybe, what kind of depth would that add? A guy like Kyle Rudolph, bringing him into the fold to kind of not even spell, but to complement Irv Smith, because really too, without Irv, like they don't have a lot of veteran depth either.
They got nobody
in the tight end room. And so that is something that is intriguing. And I've been thinking about that for a while, especially as I continue to see Kyle Rudolph. He's been at Wild games. He was at the Timberwolves playoff games. Like, you're just like, what's Kyle doing hanging out with us, okay, all right, I see.
I know he's got still got a home here in Minnesota. He was drafted by the Vikings in the second round in 2012, spent his whole career here besides the last 2 year stint with the Giants. He's not one of these guys that hopped around the journeyman from, 7 to 8 to 9 different teams. He is a Minnesota Viking at heart, and he'll tell you the same thing. He played the last 2 years because of salary cap and things like that in New York, but you mentioned it. He's been hanging around Minnesota all offseason. He's still got the home. He raised his family here, his wife and kids. There's a serious connection. He's got deep roots in the community, tons of big community service guy. At minimum, they need depth, if not a starter. And I think when you look at maybe what O'Connell wants to do. We know he's going to run the 11 personnel a lot more, which means more receivers. If Irv Smith's not out there, there's other options. I mean, you can go more receivers. You can split out some of these running backs as well. All of a sudden, there's a stable of four great running backs the Vikings have after they drafted Ty Chandler from North Carolina. You got Kene Nwangu, special teams ace. He blew up last year, not to mention your starters, Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison. So there's other options outside of Irv in the passing game. Kevin O'Connell will get creative, but when it comes to just tight end depth, flat out, if Irv Smith goes down, you're in trouble because teams will find ways to create mismatches and force you when they know you have no threat. There's no post threat at all at tight end. So bringing in Kyle Rudolph, wow, what a great idea. Hadn't thought about that yet, but you're right. You connect the dots, man. He's been hanging around Minnesota. I'm sure he would love to spend his last year or two in the NFL back in purple in Minnesota. We'll have to keep tabs on that.
You look at some of the other available options too. Is not a bad crop of guys. Tyler Kroft, Eric Ebron, Blake Jarwin, Jimmy Graham, actually, all still available at the tight end.
Let's go.
No.
Bring him home. No, we're done with it. We're not doing that.
He was here. He was here last week, but at Hopkins, but for a different thing. He was doing basketball stuff last week. Okay. But yeah, I think if he comes back at all, it'll be with the Bucks again with this guy Tommy.
No doubt.
Yeah, he might be done. He might not, but I can't see him coming to Minnesota. No
chance. But again, though, a handful of good options there. They did use a late round flyer, I think a 5th or 6th round pick last year on SMU tight end Zach Davidson, but man, he's got that Gronk size, 6'7", and can run with some speed. So there's
they have plans for him.
But again, though, in this offense, they're not going to utilize the tight end a ton. But when you do, you need somebody there. And if Irv Smith's not healthy, boy, they could be in some big trouble. All right, Reggie, you survived the gauntlet. We're back here tomorrow breaking down the Twins' first game with the A's and plenty more. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and join us every day for another episode covering all the biggest topics in Minnesota sports. He's Reggie Wilson. Follow him on Twitter at ReggieWilsonTV and on Care11. I'm Luke Inman on Twitter at Luke_Spinman. Tune in tomorrow to Superior Sports, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. For Reggie, I'm Luke. Until tomorrow, signing out.
Be blessed. Spread love this week.
This is Superior Sports Talk with Reggie Wilson and Luke Inman, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota.